Hey everybody, I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock-solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about overcoming challenges and never giving up, restarting your life, spiritual capitalism, why culture matters, and more. My guest is a husband and father. He's a serial tech entrepreneur, investor, philanthropist, and author who's living the American dream. At the age of 16, he escaped religious persecution and near-death experiences and immigrated to the U.S. from Iran with his brother and $75 between the two of them. Just 10 years later, the company he and his brother founded hit a $1.2 billion valuation on Wall Street. Sounds incredible, right? And it is. But his story doesn't end there, as you'll hear in our conversation. Please welcome the CEO and founder of One Planet Group and the man who's striving to redefine capitalism in an attempt to elevate business to serve humanity, Payam Zamani. Payam, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Of course, Jay. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. And I am so excited about this conversation in reading your book, hearing your story, doing some due diligence and research on you, your background, your company, and all the amazing things that you've done. I just know there's going to be so much value and insight that's shared in this one. So let's dive right in. I thought first, to get us started, a good starting point would be for you to share with all of us what your favorite thing is about yourself and why.
That's interesting. Um, I feel like optimism that, it is hard for me to be put into a situation that I cannot find a way out. And I think that is not because I have answers to questions, but that is because I believe there is always an answer.
Very good. So, optimism, always knowing that there's an answer available, but we have to be
Yes.
open to it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Very good. And you certainly have had your share of situations in life where you've had to maintain at least some resemblance of optimism and looking for solutions to be able to move forward, right? And so I would love if we could go back in time a bit. Your new book, Crossing the Desert, which we're going to be talking a bit more about, tells a very compelling and, quite frankly, a heart-wrenching story of your youth, family, religious persecution, just immense challenges that you faced, but again, always looking for ways to navigate. And it's a story of family, a story of love, and a story of always moving forward. So I would love it if we could go back and maybe share some of your background, and let's start in your youth and give us a bit of a
Mhm.
thumbnail sketch. We can't go into every detail, obviously, but give us some highlights, and then I might ask some probing questions there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was born in Iran, and 99% of the population of Iran are Muslims. And the biggest minority group are Baha'is, and that's the religion that I belong to. And being born into a Baha'i family, it's definitely not a walk in the park in Iran, or was not a walk in the park in Iran. And the situation got a lot more difficult when the revolution happened in Iran in 1979. The new government made life very difficult for Baha'is, killed hundreds of Baha'is, expelled almost all Baha'is from their government jobs, made it impossible for them to get licensed to start businesses, made it impossible for them to buy or sell properties, and on and on. At the age of 11, I was expelled from school. And that is one of those experiences that I think has really helped shape my life. That is one of the two situations in my life that I thought I'm in a situation that I may not be able to get out of alive. And this is when a person that I call him the chief hate officer, the person who was responsible for making sure that Islamic laws were followed in our school, and a person like that existed at every school in Iran at the time. And this is 1981. He basically told the students that day that we're going to cleanse our school of infidels. And by infidels, he was referring to me and another Baha'i in school. And the kids after school, they basically lined up, and there was a mob of them ready to kill us. And that experience, and I of course survived it. I'm here today. That experience, and then the experience that followed about 7, 8 years later, when I was finally forced to get smuggled out of Iran, shaped really how I look at struggles and difficulties. And again, this whole idea of that knowing that there is always a way. It made it a lot easier for me, I think, to be an entrepreneur as a result of dealing with those struggles. And ultimately learning that, as challenging as those struggles and difficulties may be when you're in them, it's valuable to know that every uphill is followed by a downhill. Every crisis is followed by a victory. It is not always crisis after crisis after crisis. There's a cycle in the world, every spring is followed by summer and then winter and so on. So that cycle plays a role in all aspects of our lives.
Yeah, it most definitely does, and you're obviously a testament to that. I want to stay with the first incident or the first situation that you described when you were 11 years old. So, for many of us that are listening right now, and we have people from all over the world that listen to the podcast, but many it's difficult to grasp and to understand exactly what you were going through at that time in life, because we haven't experienced it before, right? We see things on the news, but if we haven't experienced that type of persecution before, we really can't know for sure what it's like. So you had mentioned that this, as well as the other situation when you were smuggled out, were two key things that shaped your life. So going back to the first one, describe what happened, if you will. This mob is outside of this school. They're waiting for you and one other one other school child.
Yes.
What did you do? What did you do next? How did you get past this situation?
So the two of us, as most middle schools, even in the US, they have, in a sense, a boundary that kids cannot just walk away. And in our school, we had a walled courtyard. So the two of us were sitting in the courtyard, and the courtyard was empty of students, but there were still faculty that were leaving and they were driving away. So we asked the faculty if they wouldn't mind giving us a ride. But we knew their answer was going to be no. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't, because they would have put themselves in danger. So everybody is gone. The courtyard is eerie quiet. And we see all these people outside chanting death to America, death to Israel, having sticks and stone and so on in their hands. After a few minutes, we decided that either we're going to go out or they're going to come to us. So we might as well show a bit of courage and go out. So we did. And I call this the bleeding mile in my book. And there was a mile of a walk from there to our home. And the two of us lived, we were neighbors. So during this mile, the intention was to kill us. And they beat us, they kicked us, they threw rocks at us. I was bleeding. The worst thing was that they were spitting on us, all these people. So I'm, not only bloody, I'm also wet from head to toe from spit. And and I remember there was a time that I stopped feeling pain. And across the street, I could see all these adults. I could see potentially people who could be the parents of these kids. And frankly, all went through my mind was, I feel sorry for these people. I feel sorry for who they've become. What makes a people behave in this manner? And of course, you see Taliban, you see Al Qaeda and others, or Islamic State people, and it makes you wonder what causes people to behave in that manner, and for somehow to be able to justify it against all odds. I survived it. I got home, and what was the worst part of this whole ordeal for me at the time was that you could take my clothes and you could wring out spit out of them. That's how wet I was. And there was a part of me that I wanted to go out and take revenge, but then I knew, of course, that's not going to take me very far. But that was also another turning point in my life because at the age of 11, that day, I had to get at night sent out of that town away from my parents. And from 11 years on, I lived with my parents for a very short period of time as a result of what happened that day. So my story is one of many, many stories that happen to a lot of people, some in the name of being Baha'is, some to other minorities for other reasons. But the bottom line is that a lot of people that dealt with a lot of atrocities, as they do today, as the Islamic Republic of Iran continues to exist and make life very difficult for not just Iranians, but many people all over the world. I mean, look at what they've done with, supporting Hamas. How does that help Iran and Iranians? But that's what they do. They stand for misery.
What a sad situation. As I'm listening to you and as I was reading your book, I'm thinking that at such a young age, at 11 years old, to have the thought that you had in the moment that you got home or as you were arriving back home, that you felt sorry for
Mhm.
these individuals, for these parents, for having the views that they do and feeling the way that
Mhm.
they feel. And I mean, an incredible sense of awareness and maturity at such a young age. I
Yeah.
want you to speak about your parents for a moment because you and your family moved several times. Speak about your parents, what they were doing at this point in life,
Mhm.
and why was your family moving? At one point,
Yeah.
you lived in India, as an example.
Yeah. So my dad, he had become a Baha'i himself, and he was born in a Muslim family. But Baha'i faith is relatively a new religion, only about 170 years old. So most Baha'is are from a different background, and they became a Baha'i. So most Baha'is in the U.S. were Christian, and they became Baha'is, and most Baha'is in Iran were either Muslim or Jews, and they became Baha'is. And so my dad was actually born in a very much of a fanatical Muslim family. And to the point that Baha'is were known for education and so on. And when my dad was born in the 1930s, his dad would not let him go to school. He would say, if you go to school, you'll become a Baha'i. So I'm not going to let you go to school. So my dad became a Baha'i when he was in his early 20s in 1957. And he became Baha'i because he heard that term for the second time. First time from his dad, the second time from a cleric on the radio who was asking people to go and basically demolish Baha'i homes, demolish Baha'i centers, cause harm to Baha'is. So he thought that who are these people that the Muslim clerics so badly want to hurt them? So he decided to do his research. He did his research, and there were two Baha'is who taught him the Baha'i faith. Interestingly enough, now that's 1957. Fast forward to 1980, both of them were executed by the Iranian government
Wow.
for being Baha'is. But the bottom line is that because of those two young men, my dad did embrace the Baha'i faith and became a Baha'i. And he decided that, as challenging as the environment is in Iran, the message of peace that the Baha'i faith has, the unifying message of the Baha'i faith, is exactly what the people of Iran and the world need. So he decided that he would live where there were no Baha'is, and he would spread that unifying message. So when he married my mom was born in a Baha'i family. They both were very much aligned in that. And they were very much activists. They were activists for peace. That's the term I always thought about until I read that also famous quote from Martin Luther King, talking that we should all be activists for love, and I think that that's how they try to live their lives. And when they experienced tests and difficulties, their view was that nothing good comes at no price. So that is the price we have to pay as individuals to make the world slightly a better place. And they were happily willing to do that. But they did not want to see harm caused to their kids either. So when that happened, they thought that, okay, they should make some changes.
Incredible. Truly incredible. So now I want to go back to the second piece that you shared that shaped your life, because this journey of being smuggled out of Iran and ultimately immigrating to the US, this was not an easy journey by any stretch of the imagination. And I would love it if you would maybe paint the picture for our listeners. This isn't getting in a vehicle or jumping in a plane and just, easily navigating, right? There's a lot to this, and there was a lot of fear involved in this as well, and uncertainty, an immense amount of uncertainty. So speak to that a bit, and you don't have to go into every detail, obviously, but I want to paint the picture so everyone understands what was going through your mind at this time.
So you're right. There was no plane ticket that you would go to the airport, get on a flight, and leave Iran. Because, as I mentioned, the Iranian government chose to make life very difficult for Baha'is. And one of the things that they did was they took away our passports, and they decided to no longer issue passports to Baha'is. So you would think that if they don't like us so much, they would allow us to just leave. But they wanted to keep us and persecute us. And so to leave Iran as a Baha'i in the 1980s, you would have to find a smuggler. Now, a good law-abiding citizen is not naturally in touch with smugglers. So you can imagine for my mother, who was responsible for finding a smuggler, this was not an easy task. But a lot of other people had also sent their kids away, or some families had left in that manner. So you would ask friends, and friends would introduce you to somebody who knew somebody who could make an introduction. So finally, we found a smuggler. And this smuggler basically received about $10,000 in cash from my parents and said, on such and such date, I'm going to have one of my contacts meet you at the bus station in the town of Zahedan. Zahedan is where Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan meet. There's a 24-hour bus ride through the emptiness desert, which NASA has rated it as the hottest place on the planet. The temperature has hit 152 Fahrenheit a few times. So we had to take a bus from Tehran for 24 hours to Zahedan, arrive there at 8 a.m. And they had said that, come with your mom, but on the bus, you don't sit with your mom. When you arrive in Zahedan, get off the bus, don't say goodbye to your mom, and go to the side of the street, we'll pick you up. And you can imagine, as far as I know, I will never see my mom again. I've already said goodbye to my dad, and I'm going on this long journey. I have to pretend I don't know my mother. I cannot say goodbye to her. So all of these things are going through my mind and my mother's mind. And here I am, 16 years old. And she knows that these are the final hours that she has with me. She cannot touch me. She cannot talk to me. So I get to the bus station and I walked away as though I didn't know my mother. And I went to the side of the road. This white Iranian made car stopped, and the guy asked me to get in. He had, I assume, a picture of me or someone knew that that's who I was. He asked me to get in. I got in the car and he sped away. And all I remember was that I looked back through the rear window and I locked eyes with my mom, even though I cannot imagine my mom could see me because of the glare on the window. And I could tell that she was crying out loud inside, but she could not show any emotions. And she would have been arrested. Somebody would have raised red flag if she had shown emotions just looking at a car. So the car made a left turn, and that was it. And then the journey began. The journey that took over a week, took me through the desert, the mountain, in a truck, on motorcycles, by foot, on a bus, wearing Pakistani clothing so I'm not noticed. Another hike that I thought I'm going to die from thirst. And after over a week, I finally made it to the border town of Quetta in Pakistan. And a day later, with the help of the Baha'is of Quetta, I was taken to the closest UNHCR outpost and I applied for refugee status. And they gave me temporary paperwork that would allow me to basically, with the hope that I wouldn't get arrested because I was in a country illegal at that point. And and that was the beginning of my journey, a journey that took a year in Pakistan before I was able to leave Pakistan and make it to the US.
So when you were leaving Pakistan, did you, and when you had this temporary status, did you feel at that point that you had made it, that you were out of harm's way, or was there still a sense that, gosh, I may still be found out, I may still be sent back, as an example?
So of course, the most dangerous part of this journey was the 7 days that I was escaping Iran. Because if the border guards on either side would see us, they would use rocket propelled grenades and they would take you out. They would not try to stop you. They would not try to arrest you. They would have assumed that it's too dangerous for them, anyways. So once you survive that, then you're in a country illegally, which that by itself could be challenging, even with the temporary paperwork from the United Nations. It's Pakistan. So you are, and particularly that part of Pakistan, you are in a bit of a no man's land, and so then the year that I spent in Pakistan was a year that I was at some level either busy or waiting. I was busy, going to dealing with the UN, getting my permanent refugee status, or dealing with the United States, the embassy, to get my asylum accepted by the United States. But he was busy and then waiting. And then after about 11 months, I finally received asylum from the United States. And I talk about this quite a bit in my book because I talk about how when I went to the US Embassy in Pakistan, uh, that was a very emotional moment for me. But that was also I think, the moments in time that restored my hope in humanity as a 16-year-old, seeing that, there is a place on this planet, there is a country that does care about somebody that they really have no reason to care about. None whatsoever. They have no obligation. The US had no obligation towards me, but the US took me in. And I talk about the hope that this country represents and the hope that I hope will not be lost. Because if you are today a teenager in Yemen, a teenager in uh, Gaza, that, we know there are American-made bombs that are dropping there. But if you are even a teenager in Gaza, what country do you think gives you hope? It is not Saudi Arabia. It is not China. It's not Russia. It is not the Muslim countries of the world. It is the United States. And to me, that's a spiritual destiny that this country has. And I hope that as a country, we view that as a privilege, as something that makes us, in a sense, the people that can restore the humanity that we all want. And we don't shy away from it.
That is so powerful. And I think about the number of people that sometimes forget
Mm,
how incredible this country is and all that it offers, and that it truly is it's a land of opportunity. It's a land of freedom. And you're a great example of someone who came here and you worked hard to create a life here, but the door was open for you. And it was up to you to walk through and then make something out of your opportunity here. And it's really just an incredible story. Now, I want to make sure that we are kind of tying a bow on the
sure.
family side of this for a moment, because you and your brother and your sister, I believe, you were working to try to get your parents to come to the U.S. as well, and that in and of itself wasn't an easy journey, right? They had to go through the exact same journey that you did, but at first you had to convince them to come, right? They didn't necessarily want to leave.
That's right.
So so again, we won't go through every experience there, but your parents finally arrive in the U.S. What was that moment like for you, for the rest of your family, to know that your family unit is now together again after everything that you and your family had been through?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a wonderful it's a fun wonderful place to be when you know that your loved ones are safe. And we as a family for a long time, living in Iran, because of our religion and where we lived in Iran, we always felt unsafe. So, and then, with my brother and I had come to the US. My sister had come to the US, but she was sponsored by a family in Alaska. So that's where she lived. But she was safe also. But my parents were in Pakistan, and that was not necessarily a safe place to be. So when they finally arrived in the US, we felt that for the first time ever, we as a family were safe. And that was until my parents were in their late 50s, and I was in my 20s at the time. And but finally, we had found that safe place, and that is what the United States offered me. And if anyone reads my book, you'll see that in the acknowledgement section, the first people that I acknowledge, the first person or people, are the Americans as one people that I don't think that there is enough pride as there should be for what this country does to the world and how it has saved so many people. The fact is we have over 300 million people in this country, and somehow us or our ancestors were in one shape or another were given a better opportunity by this land, by the Americans who came before us. And that is something really amazing.
Yes, it is. We are all, no matter who it is, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. Every one of
Absolutely.
us. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So you're here. You end up in Modesto, California. You you're working different jobs. You go to college. Your brother goes to college, and talk to us about the first business idea that you and your brother have and that you cultivate, develop, create this startup. Where did the idea come from? And why did you think that you were the right person to do this?
So it was in 1994. I had just graduated from UC Davis, and my brother had graduated from Chico State University in Northern California. And he had gotten a job at Microsoft. And so one day he called me up. He said, I've been thinking about buying a Honda. And I went online and I could not find a website for Honda. So what do you think about us starting a website about cars? Now, I was 23 years old at the time. I had bought and sold many cars. I loved cars. I loved experiencing different cars, typically cheap cars. But I felt like for those few more valuable cars I had purchased, I'd been a victim of car dealers already too often. So I loved the idea. I'd never been online. And I don't know how many of your listeners are old enough to remember that back then there was a service called Prodigy, AOL, and CompuServe. So he hooked me up on CompuServe, and I experienced the internet for the first time, and I loved the idea. And frankly, I talk about this quite often, that people who started companies in the early to mid 90s, internet companies in that era, they did it because they had a passion for it. Nobody thought they're going to make money doing that. And my brother and I were no exception. We liked cars, and we thought it would be wonderful to build a website that would arm consumers with more information than the car salesman. And that's what we did. We were the first company ever to give access to the invoice prices of cars to consumers. And that was something phenomenal. Dealers didn't like it, but they ultimately realized that if the consumers show up, there's something for them to also gain. But that was the beginning of what became AutoWeb.com in 1994. I think there were a total of 5,000 websites registered at that point. When you think about it, I would have made more money just buying domains at the time,
Right.
just registering a lot of domains, and maybe that's what I should have done. But who would have thought that domains will become so valuable at some point?
Amazing. So you're building the company, and ultimately the company goes public, and
Mhm.
the IPO, the valuation was $1.2 billion. But before we get to that IPO,
Mhm.
I'd love it if you would talk about leadership
Mhm.
and what happened because you were in a particular role and then a decision was made for you to vacate that role. So speak
Sure.
about that for a moment and why, and how did that impact you when that decision was
Mm.
made?
So my brother and I did not fit the mold. We had a thick accent. We had not gone to Ivy League schools. We did not have a network of people that we knew in the US, particularly not Silicon Valley. And so, even to raise money while we had a successful Silicon Valley company, for our first major round of investment, we had to go to Fort Lee, New Jersey to find an investor, which is highly, highly unusual. Um, but so when the company grew to a point that the company could potentially file for an IPO, the board decided that they wanted to bring somebody who better fit the mold. And I was fine with it. I wanted to also make money, and I thought that it could be a good idea. I could learn from that kind of individual.
Hmm.
Ultimately, the individual that they wanted to bring on board was somebody that unfortunately we did not think that had the right experience, had no automotive experience. The biggest company this person had ever done was worth $20 million, while our company we knew is worth at least a few $100 million, and had no passion for building an automotive business. So, regardless, my brother and I had our votes, and the VCs had their votes, and they won. They brought the individual on board, and which unfortunately caused a lot of heartache for everybody, all shareholders, including them. Um, and that really opened my eyes quite a bit to the VC world and how the VCs think. There are definitely good VCs. There are definitely many good VCs that they have the right approach to helping entrepreneurs build businesses. But I would say overwhelming majority of them are more interested in um, getting the company to a point that they can sell or go public and sell the shares for profit. Beyond that, it doesn't really matter to them. It's just that temporary financial gain that is, and I cannot really blame them for that. That is why they exist. But I think the system is designed in a way that often entrepreneurs are not able to continue that dream, continue to implement the strategy that they had. So, it brings joy to me when I get a chance to help entrepreneurs to walk through the landmines of raising money from VCs because there are ways to avoid that.
Wonderful. So that individual that they brought in,
Mm,
did that person basically stay on? They were there through the IPO itself and stayed on for what, a short time thereafter?
yeah. So
Okay.
I prepared the company for the IPO. This person came on board. We filed immediately for our IPO.
Hmm.
And I would say within a month of our IPO, it became clear. So, like 4 months later, it became clear that we had made a profound mistake with the hire. Not because this person was a bad person, because it was just did not have the right skills for that job. And uh, but that opened up a lot more about how businesses at that level operate, how the VC world operates. They know they've made a mistake, but they were not willing uh, to fix the problem because they were worried that by fixing the problem, at least temporarily, the stock price will go down. And that is not something they were willing to stomach, even though for the long term, that would have been the right decision for the company.
Absolutely. So interestingly, I read an article about that individual
Mm,
who was brought on by the board and
mm,
ultimately 4 months later leaves, and it was an interesting perspective to hear what this individual, the way that they framed themselves, let's
mm.
say, in that situation. And
Sure.
obviously, there's always multiple sides to a story, right? So
Absolutely.
it's always important to flush that out and balance that with facts.
Mm.
But whatever the case is, so ultimately, did you end up exiting the company? And why did you leave the company?
Yeah, so my brother and I, we left the company within a couple of months of each other. My brother left because he was at a board meeting that he thought that the decisions that were being made were unethical, not illegal, but unethical. He decided that he did not want to have anything to do with those decisions. I thought I'm going to stay a bit longer to see if I can influence the company to get back on the right path. But soon I realized that I cannot. They're just that the mentality, the culture that I think that ecosystem lives in was very difficult for me to influence as a 20-some-year-old entrepreneur. And so I decided to leave also. And because I thought I'm still in my 20s and I wanted to go out there and do something different. It was really a sad, I mean, you can just imagine if you built a company to that level, that stage, job is not done. We just went public. We just raised money. These are supposed to be the good days that you have the money to build what you've been dreaming of building, but you got to leave because the company has been corrupted. And that's exactly how I felt.
So you took away some very valuable lessons from that experience
Hmm.
that ultimately, in combination with your own spiritual beliefs, values, etc., and you create a new company. And I would love it if you would share with us how you ultimately decided to start your current company
Mm,
and who were you surrounding yourself with at this stage as you
Sure.
were developing this new organization? And then I want to talk about culture because you just brought that up, but that becomes a linchpin
Yeah.
of everything that you do.
So, one thing else I got to mention about an IPO process is that besides the VC world, you also get exposed to the bankers. Now, VCs have more of an interest in the well-being of the company than the bankers do. The Wall Street does. Wall Street is simply about buy low, sell high. There's really not more to it. They have no vested interest in anything beyond that. So that is when I realized how rigged and corrupt the system was. And of course, if it's not that complicated, if you just search many of the IPOs that happened during that time period, including our IPO, Credit Suisse First Boston was behind that, and they had a massive class action lawsuit because it became clear that the stock prices are actually rigged the way that they were managing those IPOs, and they had a massive, I think they had a $600 million settlement because of the things that they had done. So all of this really opened my eyes to, oh my God, I wanted to build a business as an entrepreneur, and I had no idea I have to deal with all of this that it doesn't feel good. It makes me feel dirty to be a player in that world. On top of that, I've taken a company public. I'm a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. What's the first thing went through my mind? I gotta have another IPO. I gotta build another company, a bigger company. Why? Because that is how you measure success in Silicon Valley. That is what maybe all over the world, not just Silicon Valley. You think that you gotta outdo your previous financial success. You gotta keep that going. Why? Because we have an archaic way of measuring success. We think that financial gain, and that is why, if you're a billionaire, you feel like, well, I am only worth 10 billion. Why not be worth 30, 40? They go like, well, how much can you consume in a lifetime that you need to be worth 100 billion and then vying for 300 billion? There's only so much we can consume. And the fact that we measure our success by how much we can consume, our ability to accumulate more, seems extremely archaic and something fundamentally wrong with that. So the biggest thing that I wanted to accomplish, at least for the past decade, has been the idea of how can we bring more joy? Forget the betterment of the world, which is a big part of it, but how can we build better companies for the sake of the executives and the founders and the CEO of the company? So me as an entrepreneur, I'm more joyful. I feel more fulfilled. Clearly, it is not from a bigger market cap or a higher stock price. So what is it? And I've come to the belief that it is a life of service. That if you think about why is it that the nonprofits of the world focus on the betterment of the world and for-profits of the world focus on greed, maximization of shareholder value, why is it that businesses cannot consider their footprint, the ripple effect of their financial decisions and how their financial decisions can be also aligned with the betterment of the world? Why should there be a dichotomy? And I'm not talking about social impact businesses. I'm talking about businesses that are massive financial successes, but they choose that they're going to operate differently. They're not going to put humanity second. They're not going to put the betterment of the world second to profits. They're all important. So that has been really our focus. I view my business as being a lab to try to figure these things out. And it has been really a joyful place to be.
So, for everyone that's watching and listening right now, we are talking about One Planet Group. And Payam, I would love it if you would share with us what the core values are of One Planet Group, because as I read them, it resonates. And I wonder, as we're having this conversation, some people may listen to this and they may say, well, how is this even possible, right? How can you develop and grow and scale a business like this with these types of core values? And and spiritual capitalism, etc. How can you do it? And so I'd love it if you would share what your values are. And then I want to talk for a moment or two about culture building and how things are going today for One Planet Group.
Sure. So we have four core values. The acronym is LIFT. The first one is lead with love. Second one, innovation plus intention. Third one, future centric. And fourth one is team centric and future focused and team centric. And I'll just focus on the first two, lead with love and innovation plus intention. So most of us grew up, our parents asking us to be truthful, to be kind, basically what I consider spiritual teachings. Now, people may say that, well, that's just being good humans, and I agree. But where did those virtues come from? They are spiritual teachings, and they were taught to us ultimately by the great religions of the world. And they are all fundamentally the same because truth is one. There's, if you believe in God, there's one God, there can only be one truth. And God never changes truth from one religion to another. There was no religion ever that came that said, there's no life after death, do what you want. You don't have a soul. All religions said the same thing. It was the non-essentials that changed. So there's one truth. So if we believe in anything, and we believe humans are created noble, which I do, then how can I treat another human in any other way but with love? And that is the whole concept of the first core value, leading with love. Even when it comes to treating my competitor, it has to be with love. If my success requires someone else's demise, I should get into a different business. Now, one may say that, well, you have a better product and the consumers choose you. That to me is different than me thinking every day, I want to somehow, cause harm to my competitor. I remember a few years ago, I could see a Ford truck and a Chevy truck. The Chevy truck was pushing Ford truck off a cliff, and that was in a TV commercial. That's what I mean. That kind of competition. If Ford truck is a better truck and consumers want to buy it, great. But waking up every day thinking I want Ford to go down, that is what I don't want to think about as a CEO, as an entrepreneur. So that's one, leading with love.
And just to add that if we do that, we're expending negative energy that could
Absolutely.
be used to be putting to a good use, right? We need that. But if this is what we're doing, it goes to a zero-sum game, right? Where for me to win, you have to lose, or for you to win, I have to lose. That just isn't the way that it is.
Absolutely, I fully agree. And we need to have abundant thinking as we build our businesses, so we are able to really go way beyond the archaic way of building businesses. They may have played a role 50 years ago, but today I hope we have evolved to a different level. The second one, innovation plus intention, which is also the tagline of One Planet Group. Basically, what do we mean by that is, and people ask me often, what do you think about AI? Are you afraid of AI? And I'm like, depends. Am I afraid of the innovator? Because the innovator determines the outcome of whatever that's being innovated. So it is not the technology itself, it's how it's designed, how it's built. I'll give you a simple example. Snapchat gave basically a tool that allows you in a shape or form to rate your friends. Is that good? What is the intention behind it? That's, if I'm sitting in that meeting, I would want to contribute to the conversation that says, what is the intention behind that decision? Is that good for the youth that are on the platform if they think that I'm number 5 on your list, I'm not number 1, I'm number 8, or so on, or I just went down from 5 to 6. What does that mean? How does that affect them? Don't we already have enough mental health problems that we are adding to it? But considering the intention behind our decisions and the ripple effect our financial decisions leave behind, that to me is critical. That if we're able to put that and our spiritual values that we were raised with into one decision-making ecosystem, I think we as a world would be so much better off because we care so much more deeper about what is otherwise called business is business. It's not. Business touches humans. Business touches people that have a soul. It is way, way beyond something just simply material. It has a deep effect on humanity. So I like to think that we care about these things. Now, the way we run our company, we take it a step further. We believe in the concept of universal philanthropy. We think that it doesn't matter how much money you have. Being a philanthropist just means that you're giving, doesn't mean you're wealthy. And how much each person gives should be proportional to their wealth. So what's sacrificial to me could be different to you, could be different to Bill Gates, and so on. So we should sacrificially give for causes. We should give so much that we have uh, we that affects our ability to spend as freely as we would otherwise. That is my belief because I think that there's a cleansing that comes with that. And the final item is living a life of service. So in our company, what we do is that we offer up to 9 pay days to our employees that are service days that we pay them, but we tell them that we don't force you. You don't have to come back and report to us, but we pay you on these days with the hope that you will offer service however you see fit. Volunteer, go to help the homeless, go visit an elderly who's got nobody visiting them. Doesn't matter. There's one thing we prefer you don't do, and that is don't serve a political party on that day because by nature they're divisive. Let's be unifying, at least on that one day. But the idea is to help us reinforce those muscles that we have kind of not been focused on enough, that a business and every individual can live the life of service during their business hours. They don't have to wait till the evening or the weekend. It's something that should be intermingled. The whole idea of, I need to separate the two, I think has been one of the biggest, has been to our detriment. It's something I wish would not have happened. So I like to intermingle our spiritual lives, our service lives with our business life. Then that will bring me joy. I no longer am waiting for an exit, for an IPO. I'm happy. I'm joyful. I don't need to have an exit. We're running a profitable business, and that's good enough. Now, this doesn't mean I'm not driven as an entrepreneur. I am driven. I want to build a big, successful company. And guess what? My company is more profitable than my peers. Why? Because what employee doesn't want to work for this kind of a company? What clients don't want to work with us? What vendors don't want to work with us? Even our competitors like us. So I feel like not only you're not choosing between building a great business and doing it this way, but also you're building a business that in the long run will be more successful. Now, there's one thing I'll give you though, and that is if you're running a profitable business, a publicly traded company, and you have to judge yourself every 90 days, that may be challenging because this business will require a much longer horizon. But that longer horizon will build you into a better business.
I love it. What a great example for us to all learn from. And I love your vision and what you're striving for. It all it can do is continue to grow and benefit all of humanity. So I love what you're doing. And just from a curiosity perspective, do you hire both Baha'is and those that are not of the Baha'i faith?
Oh, absolutely. We have about 250 employees, and I think we have 6 or 7 Baha'is.
Okay. All right. And just so everyone is aware, One Planet Group, you're a private equity firm. You're investing in other businesses as well. You're incubating businesses. And so what is your vision in terms of growth over the next, let's just say, 2 to 5 years? Do you have specific plans? How many locations do you have right now?
So we own companies that we outright own and we operate, and we also invest in companies. We have about 50 investments and 4 or 5 operating companies. And so we have employees in 11 countries, but majority of our employees are in North America. Our main office is outside of Walnut Creek, outside of San Francisco in Walnut Creek, California. And but ultimately, we'd like to see our business grow. But at the same time, we always believe that a company should first maintain itself, be a solid, reliable organization for the ecosystem that it serves, including its employees and clients and so on, and then consider growth. There are years that the company should not grow, and maybe it is right for the company to basically consolidate, reflect on what the next chapter should look like for the business. So that is also another thing that I feel that the VC world should reconsider the idea of growing all the time at any cost. There's nothing wrong for a business to be profitable, take care of all of its obligations, and remain flat for a couple of years as it is considering its next phase. So we are, I tell you though, in all honesty, I would like to see that one of our businesses go public ultimately because I'm eager to operate a business differently in the public space and see how that goes. So we'll see. We may have that also in our future.
It'll happen. It'll happen. It's a matter of when, not if. And you know, coming full circle, isn't AutoWeb owned by your company now?
Yeah, 20 some odd years after I left that company, sold all my shares, had nothing to do with it. That company, had to get acquired because it, against all odds, it survived over 2 decades as an, I call them orphan company. People who didn't care much about the business, they were at the helm. And but it survived. I think speaks volumes about the business model that it had. And so we had the opportunity to buy the company, but the company had accumulated $350 million in losses, was losing money every single month, and but I was determined to fix it. We bought the company. The company became profitable within 1 month, and it is growing again. So it's been an amazing experience to bring that, our first baby back home.
I love it. And what is your brother doing today?
He is the founder CEO of a software company called Caspio.
Very good. So he is still in his zone of genius. Excellent. So, Payam, I've got one final question for you.
Sure.
What is one of the greatest gifts that life has given you that you didn't realize at the time?
I mean, I would say, in all honesty, the biggest gift has been my faith. When I look back at all of my experiences, the common denominator has been my faith, and that is what has kept me grounded. When I took the company public in my 20s, that could have done all kinds of bad things to me, access to that kind of wealth. When I lost it, when the stock price went away, all kinds of bad things could have happened. But my faith and that higher calling, I feel like has always kept me grounded, and I'm grateful for that.
Wonderful. I appreciate you sharing that. And Payam, I want to thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. What an inspiring and brilliant conversation. Your story is amazing. You're a gift. I appreciate you sharing with all of us, bringing your insights and your wisdom to our audience, and I'm grateful for you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jay. It's been wonderful to to have this conversation with you.
Well, I do appreciate that. And for all of you, I just want to thank you so very much for watching and for listening. And I do have a quick favor. Would you please take just a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts? Let us know maybe one or two key takeaways from this episode with Payam. I would appreciate that. And to enjoy more episodes, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button, and until next time, keep learning, keep growing. Make sure that you go out, matter of fact, run out and buy a copy of Crossing the Desert. You are going to be very glad that you did. And we'll see you on the next episode of Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.